Hi, this is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this is the Call to the Brewman's Bottle.
The Call to the Brewman's Bottle.
So, we're going to just jump right in and start talking about some video games. I've been hearing a lot about this new Star Wars Battlefront video game that's been coming out. I think it comes out November 2015, so it'll be here right around time for Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that for you to get your game on there. But ever since I was, still living with my mom and playing on my old PlayStations, I've played the Battlefront games, and I remember them being really, really awesome. I've always loved Star Wars games, and this has been one that was a killer because it lets you in on some of the battles that you see in the movies, but you don't really get to know much other than the hero's perspective. And you get to go through as a soldier or somebody that drives a vehicle and all that, and it's a really cool experience to get that perspective on a game from a Star Wars game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it's something I've wanted for a long time, and I wish they wouldn't have stopped making them. I always thought that was going to be one of those games that was just going to come and come. You'd get more and more Battlefronts, almost like
Battlefront number 10.
Yeah, almost like a Star Wars Madden game. That would be their big competitor. But the new Battlefront that's coming out, there's a trailer out right now that you can watch that's got something on it that says the game engine footage. And the engine for this game looks spectacular.
It's Frostbite 3.
Frostbite 3.
Yes, and it's made by DICE.
Okay. Well, from the cutscene or the trailer that I've seen, it looks like it's going to be a Battlefield quality graphic Star Wars game.
Yes, that's actually DICE publicly announced that's the area that they're going for.
Right on. Well, I'm really looking forward to that one. I'm also really getting down on reading a lot about this new Batman Arkham Knight game that's coming out, and I actually just read some pretty bad news. Have you heard about this, Matt?
The $100 game?
Yeah, the $100 full game. This really strikes a personal chord with me. I hate that these developers are telling us all about these awesome games. We've talked about it before, and then when they put it out, it's not truly what they said it was going to be. This game in particular is putting out the regular version of the game that's going to cost you $60, and we're all used to that. But then it's going to put out a $40 license that you can buy, like the Batman Arkham Knight.
The minimum
Premium.
game.
Yeah, it's where all the DLC that comes out, everything that comes out later on is going to be available if you buy this premium license, or you're going to be able to buy it individually. And it's not going to be the acceptable things as far as I'm concerned, which is visual stuff where you can make your characters look different, or it gives you a different online presence or whatever. This is full-on game content that's coming out, and it's not just one or two every so often, kind of like Skyrim does, or the Oblivion or the Elder Scrolls games does. This is for the next year. They're going to put out more storyline missions, more
additional characters with their own storylines.
Yes, and more villains that are going to pop up and attack your city, and all this really cool stuff that's going to happen isn't going to happen unless you buy this license.
And another bad thing is, man, some of the characters you can't even get unless you have a PS4.
So it's not only you're going to have to buy a license to get certain things, but you're only going to get certain things if you own it on a certain console. So basically, is that going to be even more content that the PS4 has to buy? Or is that just stuff that...
Yeah, some of the additional villains, if you want to play their storylines, they have to be bought on the PS4.
So as we're looking at the way that developers are putting out games, and we're talking about this idea that they're teasing us with content. They're saying we're going to put out this really awesome game and so on and so forth. But then they're going to say, well, you can buy a piece of the game, or you can buy the whole thing for this $100 premium game, and you're going to get the real work that they put in and the further development. And I think that this is a huge plague on gaming right now.
It's terrible.
there are so many different ways that I think that developers can go about doing something very similar to this without actually breaking in and just saying, well, we're going to charge you extra and give it to you later. I think there's a lot of ways to make it optional as well. So if they're wanting to do things to where they can make more money, I think there's plenty of people that will continue to spend money on their game without them making it so that the only way you can experience the fullness of the story of our game is to buy more stuff. I really find that upsetting. If you don't go out to a bookstore and buy a book that's
a portion of a book.
Yeah, that's got a few blank pages, but you can go and get a one that doesn't have those blank pages, and it's going to cost you more money. And I find it absolutely ridiculous that the video game developers can do this. I would like for somebody to point out another industry that's gouging the people that make the industry like video games are. It really is bothersome to me, and I think the only way we're going to change it is to not participate in it. And I personally, I'm not going to buy this Batman game. I'm not interested in even the first part of it, and they've lost me entirely as a supporter when it comes to a video game developer or a video game company because of this. I don't know about you, Matt. I'm just not interested.
The only two major things that I would see that's actually good about this game is that it is 5 times the scale of the open-air Arkham City prison in Arkham City. Right. And the way that they made you be able to call your car at any time is kind of dropped a little bit. They've actually raised the building height and widen the streets in some portions of the game to where it would want you to get in your car and call it at any time, but it also makes you play outside of the car. It makes you go a 3D play. It's not just a 2D action game. It makes you play in the air and on the ground simultaneously, just about.
Right on. So, I mean, the game itself, I've always thought since I first started reading about it was going to be a really, really fun game. And it just makes me sad that they're doing this because, like I said...
You should never have to pay $100 for a game.
Yeah, that should be optional based on your willingness to pay for that game and how much you like it.
The extra skin or whatever, yeah.
Because there are plenty of games that I'll admit I've spent well over $100 on. I mean,
but you got the full game before you spent that $100.
Right. They got me before they came after my wallet. And I think that that's really important. I didn't even feel like they were coming after my wallet at that point. I felt like they were then offering me more based on the merit of the product that they already put out.
Before we move off of that, I want to kind of go back to Star Wars Battlefront. One thing I want to point out that was really awesome that I read up on was the Battle of Jakku. That is the additional content that's released, and as long as you buy the game before December 8th, you get that for free.
Okay, see, and that is another thing, like I just said, that there are plenty of similar things that game developers can do that aren't such blatant greed that we're going to make you pay for this much more. These are people saying, if you already support us and you want to get in on the initial wave and be a part of supporting us before the game ever comes out, then we're going to give you something for that.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's showing good on the developers versus evil on the developers. These people are in my opinion, they're there to put forth a product that's an art form, much like, a musician puts out certain music stuff, and the merch that the musician puts out, you don't have to buy 3 t-shirts before you can go get your favorite band's album, or vice versa. You don't have to buy an album before you can go buy a t-shirt. It's all up to you and to how you support these people. They're not baiting you in to support them with content. And I think that that's really what bothers me is don't bait me with the product itself. I was already in on the product that I wanted to buy from you, and if it was worthy, I would continue to buy from you. It makes me wonder if they don't have enough confidence in the game that they already made.
So, you mentioned earlier that one of our viewers decided to make a point that he wanted to hear more about DM tips on D&D 5.0.
Yeah, so we got a comment on the YouTube channel asking what type of DM tips would we give to somebody if they hadn't done the Dungeon Master thing before. I want to come out first and foremost and say that I've only been a Dungeon Master one time in my life. Now, I've read the books and I have a lot of opinions on what I think a Dungeon Master should do as a player, but that's not something I've necessarily done. I know Matt's been in the majority of his Dungeons and Dragons career, Dungeon Master has been his chosen role.
My forte, yeah.
So I know that the first and foremost suggestion any Dungeon Master would give someone that's just on the cusp of doing it themselves would be get your Dungeon Master's Guide of your chosen edition and read it. And really sit down and take in the different pieces of that particular book, because that's what all of your foundation of what you're going to be able to manipulate in the game, that's where it's based, is in that guide. It's going to tell you how to manipulate those things, correct?
Yes, I agree. And I would also like to add on to that if you're the DM, you also need to read the player's guide all the way through. That's the entire section of combat, all of the items, and how the players will interact with the NPCs most of the time.
Right. I think that first and foremost, anybody that's going to go for being a Dungeon Master should understand the game from the player's perspective, because what you're trying to improve as a Dungeon Master is game for your player. You know, the more fun that everybody is having, that's the success of the game. So you're not necessarily, as a Dungeon Master, playing against or with anyone as much as you're just trying to make the quality improve. So you need to know the player's angle as well as the creator's angle as a Dungeon Master.
New DMs, get to know your players first and foremost. Understand their faults and their strengths. It's good to know that someone can play a fighter, but if you think that you really need to put him in a challenging situation that makes him think, you need to think about bad situations for fighters, or bad situations for wizards, or really whatever class that he or she would want to play. Another tip I'd like to throw out is go ahead and get used to the storyline arc that you're trying to make or you're trying to play out if it's already pre-made. Add in fluff of your own, especially if it's players that you know personally. You can make the game a real friendship style if you add your personal flair that they like as well. It keeps them coming back for more.
Right, and that comes from getting to know your players as well. If you're sitting there talking out with everybody exactly what they like to play and so on and so forth, and then you take a look at their character and the background that they came up with, or in the new 5th edition, the background that they've rolled and that they've gone with there, then you can really jump off of that with your session and make people want to come back because of something that, you know, they feel like they took a part in creating as well.
And it doesn't have to be complex either. You can make the simplest thing 30 minutes to an hour long if you wanted to, and you can make the most complex thing as quick as possible. It all comes down to making your players happy, because you've decided to take the captain seat. You're already having fun. You're developing the story. You're the god behind the scenes. What you really want is to see your players shine, because if your players shine constantly, you always are on your toes as much as they are.
Right. One of the things that I think can really ruin a session just as much as it can make a session is a DM trying to make sure that they are having fun. The game itself is what should be, in my opinion, entertaining the DM, as well as his ability to interact with each individual player all at once by making the game. I think we're getting a lot covered on the part where you're going to mentally grasp what's going on as the DM. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up was the specifics of how the DM's guide is going to tell you how to build encounters, and how important it is as a DM to know the encounters that you're going to build them and learn how to populate an encounter on the fly. It's really, really important because of the unpredictability of a party.
That also comes down to being quick on your feet as a DM, period. Understand the experience level how many players you have in the party and how seasoned they are as well.
Oh yeah, not everybody is going to be able to utilize their character to the maximum potential, especially if it might be like the first time somebody's ever played a certain character, and you want to know that as a DM when you're building an encounter and you're populating it with different monsters and so on.
Don't try to start out with a complex monster. If you're a DM that's as new as the players especially, why don't you try something that you would, as a player, that you like fighting, and I hate to use this as an example, but everyone understands this. Greenskins. Greenskins are easy to manipulate. They're an easy intro, and there's several different styles. There's goblins, there's orcs, there's bugbears and trolls and giants and everything in between. And they all have different attitudes and perspectives in the game. So if you would want to build something easily, you can start out with that. You can start out with maybe something as simple as a human ruffian or a band of thieves. Something simple that you can grasp, and not only your players. Now, for more seasoned players and a new DM, I would go back to step one and understand exactly what the players like, because at that point, you're a brand new chef and you're trying to feed very hungry individuals.
Right. I think that also when it comes to the literature that you'd need to read, when you're talking about the different abilities and attitudes of the monsters, you need to get yourself a monster manual of some kind.
And read the descriptions of the actual species, yes.
Yeah, in order to really be a good DM, I think your ability to select the right monster is a paramount skill. You need to know, like Matt just said, you've got greenskins. You need to know how those greenskins are going to act. And then when you're looking through the monster manual at the different orcs and goblins and trolls and bugbears, you'll be able to see the abilities that they're going to use, the different reactions that they might have in combat. And for a new DM who might have never looked at a monster manual, when you look at a monster description in a monster manual, it gives you so much more than just the monster's stat line and the things that he might be able to use, like his weapons and stuff. You're also going to get a look at his abilities. And when you're reading an ability for a monster like that, there's oftentimes going to be things within that are going to tell you how that monster might behave. There's going to be footnotes that'll tell you where that monster might fight or feel most comfortable fighting or running. Especially with greenskins, a lot of them will run if their leader is killed. So you need to use, when you're picking out, say, monsters for your party to fight, I guess what I'm hearing you say is that you want to find the right monster for the right party.
Correct.
You want to make your rogue be able to do rogue things.
It's the perfect villain for the good guy kind of scenario.
Right. Well, moving on a little bit from D&D to more of the live action D&D, there's something I've been seeing in the news that really gets off my LARP jollies, and it's that there is a live steel combat organization doing live steel, like octagon style knights in armor fighting each other. And I took a look at a few of these videos. There's a Russian fighting organization called M1 that's doing, basically it's just these two guys will get in a ring and they'll fight each other. Now, this isn't the first time I've seen this style combat. There's a group that gets together somewhere in Europe. I've forgotten.
Called Battle of Nations.
And it's called, Battle of Nations, where they do this style of combat where just from the outside looking in, it basically looks like if you can get somebody off their feet and onto the ground, they're out of the fight. And it goes from anything from a simple like 3-on-3 or a duel to a 20-on-20 fight. And there's teams that come in with all this armor and shields and swords or pole arms or great swords or what have you, and they get together and they do these fights. And
it's full contact.
Right.
It's full everything, really. I've watched videos with you where they've gotten them up on the side of the ring and actually are full on punching them as hard as they can, trying to knock them down.
Well, this M1 stuff that they're doing, you'll really get to see that if you look up some of these videos. And I strongly suggest anybody that's into any of the combat style discussions that we have, go check out Battle of Nations. and go check out, just look up the M1 Armored Knight. But just if you put that into Google, you're going to find some of these videos that have just been coming out, and you'll get to see these guys are really hitting each other. And if nothing else really gets to you from these videos, you get to see how it was for people to actually fight each other.
Right. It's not just swinging your sword. Your entire body is a weapon.
Exactly. And I mean, an armored person going into combat is not what you would usually think of when you're, thinking of what Hollywood has given you from the medieval combat perspective. There is a lot more that would go into the fight physically that you're going to get to see, and I think it's really, really cool that they're doing stuff like this, because a lot more people are going to get to see that a medieval combat scenario was a lot more vicious and rugged than you really ever can conceive until you're standing there, you're seeing someone standing there in the middle of it. Am I right?
Right.
When I first got into doing any type of foam combat or anything like that, the end goal was to be like my favorite characters. And ever since I was a kid, I saw Mel Gibson and Braveheart just going into these big melees. And I don't know what it was about that, and I know multiple other young boys felt the same way, that really just was awesome to me. That was real fighting where two guys were getting at each other. But I never really thought about what it might actually be like. And when it comes down to an armored person or, a peasant or something like that, these people had a very much different encounter on the battlefield when you really start thinking about what it was like to have all of your limbs protected by maybe stronger metal than whatever sword's being swung at you. And so in these combat things, it seems like the main points are gained from actually getting the person on the ground. Because to really kill an armored person, you would probably need to knock them off their feet. Speaking of LARPing and combat fighting and stuff like that, I would like to mention that coming up recently here local to where we are, there's a pretty large foam fighting event coming up called Beltane. And it's run by a local fighting organization, and it's a Belagarth event that we've attended ever since we first started going to events.
Years and years ago.
Oh, yes. And it was really what got us into fighting beyond just going out on Sunday and hitting our friends with sticks. And recently, these events have been growing again, and they've been getting a lot better when it comes to the people running the event, keeping it entertaining throughout the entirety of the fighting day, and giving people more time to just get out there and really do what it is that we do. So I just wanted to shout out that that's something that's going on. And if you don't know about it and you might have something to do, it's this weekend. They're going to be out, and you might want to look up the Beltane Belagarth event here in Tennessee.
It's at Monty Bell.
At Monty Bell State Park in is it in Dixon? I believe
it's around there.
Yeah, it's right near Dixon. So moving on from LARPing, you want to check out some of the nerd TV that you've been watching lately?
First and foremost on that, the new Dragon Ball series, Dragon Ball Super, is coming out.
Yeah, I was scrolling through my news feed on Facebook the other day and got real excited when I saw that. Dragon Ball Z was my personal first anime that I ever watched. What about you, Matt?
Oh, yeah. When I was little, Dragon Ball was the way to go. And, it took forever for me to actually finish the show. There's so many episodes.
Oh, yeah. And it's such a good introductory anime because there is so much to it. Given that a lot of it is filler and the art is a little bit old compared to what you might be used to seeing, it really is just, I don't know, for me, there's the nostalgia element, and there's the fact that there's constant action throughout a lot of the anime that just really is something, I think, for anybody that gets into the anime scene, it's got some real good elements to get you started. But the fact that this is the first Dragon Ball to come out on TV, the Dragon Ball anything in the past, I think
18 years.
Yeah, 17, 18 years. I don't really feel like it's been that long. Do you?
No, and the last one was GT, and I was not a big fan of it.
No, I can't say I was a very big fan of it either, but in the articles that I've read, I don't remember the specific creator of Dragon Ball.
That's Akira Toriyama.
Yeah, but apparently they're bringing back some of the original artists. One of the quotes that I read in an article was one of the people that does a bunch of the voices for, there's like Gohan and Trunks and so on and so forth, had something to say that was real positive about the fact that they're throwing back with the title. Overseas and in Japan, where they have it, Super's always been involved with the Dragon Ball name in some way, shape, or form, but the fact that it's actually being called Dragon Ball Super is a throwback to some of the first days of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. And so that just gives me hope individually that they're going to go back to what it was originally like.
Well, Akira is actually overseeing the entire show.
Well, that's
the producer
awesome.
and the directors.
I also was reading about where it's going to take up. The story's actually going to pick up after the Majin Buu and all of that fight goes down.
Correct.
And that's real exciting to me because to me that's when it really ends. You mentioned that you really didn't like GT.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of it too, and I wasn't a huge fan either.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's set right after that, and it's set in a time that Earth is in peaceful harmony with everything once again.
Right. So for me, it's going to be able to pick up just like I had never experienced what GT was. I mean, it might have some throwbacks to stuff that might happen in GT. I'm not 100% sure, but the fact that it's continuing on from the storyline where I really just left off really enjoying it, man, I find that to be awesome.
So speaking of Nerd TV, Josh, you pointed out a little video that I did not see while I was gone this weekend of Colin Cowherd off the show The Herd.
Yeah, actually, so we talk a lot about Heroes of the Storm and different MOBAs and stuff because we've been into them. The first MOBA experience I had was the Defense of the Ancients mod on Warcraft 3.
Which was when we were teenagers.
I had no idea what I'd be participating in years and years later, but this specific video I felt is worthy of note because this is a guy, for those of you that don't know, MOBAs are really breaking into the professional gaming scene. Previously, it was mostly first-person shooters, arena shooter style games that were getting a lot of major time with the game, like with the pro circuits, as well as real-time strategy games. Well, MOBA being so closely related, in my opinion, to real-time strategy games, is breaking into this, and they had the Heroes of the Dorm, which was televised on ESPN2 or ESPN3.
Which is awesome.
Yes, and I've seen it said that it was on ESPN3 in some articles and 2 in others. But this guy, Colin Cowherd, has a radio show called The Herd where he felt it was necessary to say that he would quit his job in broadcasting sports if they ever asked him to broadcast anything on a video game. And he really was talking badly about all the people that play video games, that are interested in video games breaking out into professional circuits, and said that he thinks that we should all just stay locked in our basements and play in our games and all of this. And I think that first and foremost, this shows his lack of information on what's going on with the gaming scene right now.
Yeah, he actually made a point. He said the last game that he tolerated was Donkey Kong.
And I don't know if there was ever I'm sure there was a professional Donkey Kong scene at some point, but I highly doubt it ever approached anything like the I think it was either $2.2 billion or $22 billion that the gaming industry's pulled in when it comes to the professional circuits, that these guys are, I mean, really getting up there with being on par with the professional sports circuits.
I mean, it goes to prove in, where's it at? Is it Vietnam? Where they play StarCraft?
Where
South
they played
Korea.
A lot of StarCraft.
Yes. And they've been doing that since we were like young adults.
Bro, they still play StarCraft. They're still doing it.
And they
StarCraft
still have
2,
tournaments.
And it's great. And they, not only are you getting to watch something that you can sit there and get up and go do yourself without ever leaving your house, which I think is what was the draw to sports in the first place, is you can go to school and play football. Of course, I want to go home and watch football with my dad. We can relate about things that are going on in my life. This is exactly what I want, and that's why I love watching football. But I know that when I get older and I have children and they're going to see the video games that I play and the things that I do, we're going to be able to bond and watch this on TV together. Maybe my kid may aspire one day to play as well as some of the people that he sees. And these people are using their brains mathematically. They're using their response times with their reflexes on the computer.
I mean, it's an active chess game.
Yes. I mean, I'm not sitting there saying that they're getting exercise and all of this other things. I mean, you will always need to be physical. But when it comes to the benefits of getting really good and focusing at a video game, I do believe that they exist just as much as somebody can say that they're not healthy.
Yeah, and don't try to make or relate a visual response setup that you're doing like a video game to a physical response. They're two different things completely.
Yeah. But that's not to say that there isn't a benefit from somebody taking the time and getting good at a video game to the point that it can support them, or that they might have a career in broadcasting that video game because they have a passion about it. One thing that I believe wholeheartedly as a person is that passion is a good thing. And when somebody is passionate about something and is very interested and wants to grow in that specific thing, especially if it's a hobby that they can share with other people and socialize about, that is a good thing. There's no reason that you should sit there and, you know, like this guy came out and was talking about how we're not doing anything. He's saying, you know, we're just locked in our basements, you know, being derogatory towards us. This is something that I believe these kids have heard for far too long.
No offense to him, but offense to him at the same time. Our generation doesn't even understand living in the basement and playing video games. That's not even a thing for us. That was like an 80s thing.
Yeah.
Early 90s.
I mean, there are extremes everywhere. It's the same thing as saying that, you know, the first-person shooter causes somebody to want to go out and be more violent. I'll even go so far as to say that I think somebody that's going to say even going out and shooting up a town in Grand Theft Auto, no, that's not going to be causing somebody to want to do something like that.
No, that means your kid is just violent.
Yeah, exactly. There's other problems there. So if somebody's going to lock themselves in their basement and play video games, there's other problems there. It's not the video game that's the problem. You can look at so many other examples that say the complete opposite. I find it absolutely hilarious. And if for no other reason, this guy needs to be enlightened to the fact that there's money to be made, there's interest to be harnessed, and if for any reason he wants to have any influence on the next generation that's going to come in and take over what he's been doing and broadcasting what he's been interested in and doing that, then he's going to need to, you know, exactly what he said.
Ride the wave or get crashed under it.
He's going to need to quit. He's going to need to get out of the way, because what's coming is the fact that, I don't know about anybody else, but when's the last time you sat down with somebody and really and truly hashed that out about what was going on the baseball scene? And I loved baseball as a kid, but my interest in that sport has dropped off so much. And it's just simply because there's nothing that's continuing to draw me to it. You know, there's too much negative coming out of it. And if there's positivity coming out of video games and enough interest being drawn that it can be on TV, let's be positive about what it's doing instead of sitting there and talking trash. And this guy in particular, he said he'd go quit his job and sell bait in a fishing village. Well, go right ahead, as I'm sure so many people have already said. Go ahead and get ready.
He even said he would put a gun in his mouth later on in the interview.
Yeah, I remember hearing something like that. And it's just, you know, I guess I pity him that he doesn't understand that, you know, we're really all trying to be a part of the same thing and getting our interests out there and getting this wholesome entertainment out there for people in however or whatever way that we can. Also, on the elements of specific, you know, video games and stuff like that on TV, there's been a lot of really good, I think, streaming services for your specific TV interests coming out. We referenced Netflix once already in our conversations here, but we also want to bring up that it's really seeming like, depending on what you're interested in, your need to be connected through having cable is becoming smaller and smaller. Somebody like myself, I'm really only interested in movies, anime, certain TV shows like that, and I would say long-running series-style TV shows. And in wanting that type of entertainment, I know that there's Netflix that I can get streaming from. There's Hulu. If you want to even get down into your specifics, there's what was that anime one that you were talking about?
Crunchyroll. We have a friend that mentioned that Crunchyroll is just about the same as Netflix every single month.
Right. There's an anime streaming service with Crunchyroll. I know Funimation has the Funimation network that I'm sure you can get a subscription
Which is
to
awesome.
somehow. So there's all these different ways that you can specialize your entertainment for really little or nothing. I don't know what the cable rates are all over, but if you can get your internet for $50 and then Netflix and maybe 2 other streaming services, you're talking about spending $75, $80 for your total.
For some people,
Yeah,
it's saving $100 to $200.
Yeah, for all of your electronic entertainment, you can cut your bills down so much. And not only that, but you can get access to a lot of things that through just watching TV and stuff that you're just not going to see. It just doesn't seem to come up. And there's also for people, I personally have no preference when it comes to subtitles or actual dubbed TV shows or movies, but you can get a lot more stuff with the subtitles, with the original audio when it comes to anime. A lot of people are really concerned with that. You can get that through these services, whereas some other places that you go, you might end up pirating it. You might end up getting something that's of a lower quality.
Oh, even if you have cable, I mean, you can have 1,000 channels just about. The foreign films that come out in these streaming services, you're only going to see on the streaming services.
Right. And I know that when it comes to like on demand for AT&T or Comcast, now this is awesome that they have it at all, but when you go into the specific channels availability of what you can stream from there, there's only like 4 or 5 episodes, whereas a lot of these streaming services, you're going to be able to go back and start from square one.
Entire seasons, yeah.
Right. If you want to bring your friend into a show or something like that, it's going to be simple because you can bring them all the way back to episode 1. I know last time we were doing a podcast, we talked a lot about specific movies that were coming out. There were a whole bunch of movies coming out. And one of them that we talked about was the new Batman and how both of us had our minds changed about Ben Affleck as Batman. Well, there's a picture that's been going around online lately of Jared Leto as the Joker. And most of the people that I've seen on the internet have just been up in arms about this one picture.
It got a very negative response.
Right, where he's got tattoos and all of this and that and the other. To me, I if you wouldn't have told me that was the Joker, I wouldn't have known. But it's Joker costume, and I personally, like I said multiple times before, I'm not a huge superhero person. When it comes to Batman, though, he is one that I would be a little picky about because I guess he's one of the few I actually know a lot about. But that's not the way I see the Joker. What about you, Matt? What are your feelings on all
That's not how I see the Joker at all. Now, I'm glad that the actual picture isn't real. That was an artist depiction with Jared Leto's ideas and probably the photographers as well. It has been announced that none of the tattoos will be on him, but that is a terrible beginning for a new Joker release. You got to understand, it's since the first comic book, the Joker has been there. Mm-hmm. Don't mess it up.
Well, dude, he is the villain for me and so many other people. The Batman versus the Joker. That's what it is, and that's what you got to get right. I mean, I think the rest of the movie could really suffer, but as long as if it's got Batman in it and it's got the Joker in it, you did those two characters and their interactions correct, and you did it right. But just like you said, with an initial release, and he's not going to have any of the tattoos, and that was just an artist doing something that maybe they saw.
It's edgy, whatever the reason. That was dumb.
I guess there are people who like to do that fan art where you change the style of it and you make him look a certain way, but then you've also got to realize that when you're doing it with something like the Joker, especially with the lineup that you've got to follow with the Joker, you've got first and foremost Heath Ledger, in my opinion, and right there next to him, the one that he based himself off of with I can't believe I can't
Jack
remember
Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, making that character in itself being done by two such amazing actors who can just engross themselves in a role. You can't really mess around with what you're going to do with that character anymore. They've set a bar, and when that bar's not met, I truly believe there's trouble. But anyways, you've said that there's not going to be any of the tattoos or anything like that. So without all of that, I think even looking at him, what about the teeth? Because I know he had a grill, and he had some other things that are going on.
Yeah, I think all of that is removed. Now, the big teeth will be there because, of course, the Joker has big, comical-looking teeth.
Oh, certainly. And that didn't necessarily...
But all of that is, like I said, all of it. He's supposed to be what's described as clean-cut, is what I understand, at least.
Now, that has been my only problem with some of the other Jokers, is that my image of the Joker is presentation at its core. He is all about... He is clean
The
cut.
grandeur of it all.
Exactly. He's putting on a show. And if it's not about looking good for the show, then what are you doing? I've always taken him as that type of a character. And going into the comic books and stuff like that, one of our friends gave both of us some comic books and told us about something that we didn't really know anything about. And it has to do with the Marvel Universe shift.
The Secret Wars.
We hadn't heard anything about it, and then all of a sudden one of our buddies shows up at our house and hands us 2 comics and tells us that these are going to be comics that, out of all of the comics that we do have, because I have my Conan comics and certain things that are comic books to me that allow me to say I am a comic book fan, and then Matt's got his superhero comics and the things that he enjoys, that he said out of all the ones that we have, these are going to be the ones that we really want to keep. And it's because the Marvel Universe is going through this, like Matt said, this Secret Wars, where all the universes in Marvel are merging, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're all merging into one. And if you actually go to the Secret Wars website, you can look at the Battle World map. And as each different one is released, like Civil War or Valley of Flame or King James England with Batman, or even Planet Hulk, all these are examples. As soon as they're released, they're put on the Battle World map publicly.
Okay, so they're adding continuity throughout all of their universes.
Yeah, it actually looks like, me just giving it a quick overlook, there are 4 more blank spots left before it is actually completely finished.
Well, and I'm sure they'll probably expound on that, on the map that they have there a little bit more as they come up with more. But from what they're saying, in the current universes that all of you might know Marvel characters in, whether you love or hate them, which ones that you know, are being wiped clean. And whatever's being written in those universes is being wrapped up.
You better collect them fast, buddy.
And so we got some really cool variant edition first issues. I got one of the Fantastic Four, and Matt got one of...
Captain America.
Was it Captain America
And
or Guardians
also,
of the Galaxy?
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, and then he got me that signed first edition of Magneto, which is really nice as well.
So, yeah, our buddy came over and just made it rain comics one day and told us about this, and we found it really interesting, and we wanted to tell you guys about it. It seems that, you know... I don't know. Like I said, I've never been a huge superhero guy, but it seems that these comic book people are getting together and making it so that they can make these big universes, so they'll all have continuity throughout their characters. And for me, that's something that can get me into what they're doing going forward. I feel like I missed the boat on what they did, and the fact that they're bringing it out, hey, man, they might have a new Marvel fan sitting here. Who knows?
Yeah. Speaking of comics, I've got a couple that I've read and a couple that I want to read.
All right.
So the first one I'm going to talk about is Frankenstein Underground. This is based off of the last Hellboy series. It's a 5-part miniseries.
All right.
I've read 1 and 2. And what I've seen so far is, just to give you a quick overview of it, Josh, Frankenstein has been cast out by all of humanity. He's tired of living with everyone, and he decides to go into the center of the earth, if that makes any sense. The writer is focusing a lot on classical Frankenstein, so how he talks is very close to the original book. Okay. And basically, he tries to escape humanity, but realizes that there is terror that lives underneath, a lost human civilization that has the capability of destroying everything that he actually does hold dear.
So when you're saying Frankenstein, are you talking about Frankenstein, or are you talking about Frankenstein's monster?
Actual Frankenstein's monster.
Okay. So this is like Frankenstein's monster from the Hellboy universe goes on his own side story?
Yes, it's after the last Hellboy series, which I haven't read.
Okay.
But I got really hooked on this first one, and after reading a quick overview of it, I really want to finish it.
Well, that sounds pretty awesome. I like things that talk about, like you said, where they're going back to the original books. I like things that stick to the source material, so that does sound really interesting. You said you got a couple. What else have you got over there?
For those of you that keep up with Batman, Endgame number 40 was released, I believe, yesterday.
Endgame number 40?
That is the last time that Snyder, one of the writers for Batman, is going to actually have feature of the Joker.
Okay.
To give another quick overview, Joker has released laughing gas into the inhabitants of Gotham, and Batman has had to call upon all of his foes, like the Penguin and Poison Ivy, and a couple more to actually help him fight the Joker. And where in Death of the Family, the Joker was focused on how Batman inspires him, and actually he loves him and he understands his point of view as much as he understands his point of view. Mm-hmm. In Endgame, it details how the Joker reacts to the Batman's perceived betrayal of their dynamic overall. Okay. So it's basically one last joke, as he describes it. I'm not going to ruin anything for anyone, but understand that it is an amazing ending.
Awesome. So this Endgame series, this is number 40. Has it been something that's kind of like wrapping up something in the Batman universe? Is that why? Is he like just wrapping up the Joker's
Snyder's
story?
wrapping up Joker's story, and I can't remember originally where it started, but it's the one it's Joker's story from like Death in the Family and 0 Hour, I believe is what it's called, or 0 Year.
Wow. Well, for anybody like myself that has just kind of skipped out on comic books, having been exposed to people that have got me reinvigorated a little bit, these new series that are coming out, if you can get your hands on them and read them from the beginning, it's a fun endeavor in its own right to go out and look for some of these series from the beginning at the different comic book stores that might be around you. But also, it will reinvigorate your ability to read a comic book and get interested in a character, because a lot of them are written in a different light than what you might remember reading in a comic book. They might have a more graphic novel style. They might have a more manga style. They all have their own subtleties that make them more solid pieces of literature than just flippant little things you might buy for your kids.
It really gives life to the artists themselves.
Exactly. So, just in us talking about this, if you're not really interested in comic books, I would say take some of these suggestions, go start searching, and see if it might get you into some comic books. So, you have anything else over there?
Yeah, just a quick thing on Endgame. Just to kind of like add to what you were saying, Divergence number 1, which comes out on May 2nd, that's the new Batman. He's in an exo metal suit.
All right.
So it kind of looks like a mech style. So even if you didn't like the original Batman, or one of the older Batmans, or Vampire Batman, you might actually like exo metal suit Batman. So
well, it might just strike your Gundam fancy.
Right, exactly. The last one I'd like to touch on is Fight Club number 2, issue 1. That's going to be a 10-part issue series.
Fight Club number 2,
yes.
issue 1. So, is there a comic book series Fight Club number 1? Or is it just
it's-
coming off the book?
Chuck himself, the original author, is writing all of this.
All right. All right.
It's based off the book, not the movie.
Okay.
So go ahead and get that out of your brain. A lot of the writers said that they're going to have trouble coming over that hill as much as the movie has become a cult classic.
Right. It is its own thing, really.
Right. But the original book is where Chuck is focused on. And in this series, Sebastian, which is the name of the narrator, has married Marla, and she is pregnant and has had a kid of his own. And actually, he notices that there are tendencies of Tyler and his son himself.
Oh, wow.
And where the original was based on single men that were trying to find their way in the world, and eventually pushed into the cog of the system, this is going to be focused on married men in their mid-30s with no aspirations of the future.
So Fight Club as a solution to a midlife crisis.
Exactly. That's exactly where we're going.
Instead of as a solution to why can't I find my place in the world kind of deal. That, man,
it's going to be exciting.
I'm just over here grinning because it sounds so awesome. And it's going to be a comic book.
It's going to be a 10-part series.
Okay.
And like I said, Chuck is writing everything, and he is overseeing the artwork too. So.
Well, and that's just that's amazing. I'm not going to say I'm a huge Chuck Palahniuk or however it is you want to be the person that says it however you want to say it. But the only book that I read outside of I've read a little bit of Fight Club, but the only book outside of that I ever read was called Invisible Monsters. And Invisible Monsters is a cool book in its own right, but it's a story that really didn't grab me. And I think that's part of what speaks to the man's ability as an author is I didn't even really like the story. But when it came to the message the book was trying to give or what have you, I really couldn't put it down. I couldn't stop reading it because I needed to know what was going down in the end. I had in my heart what I thought what the situation was, and it just wasn't. But that's really cool. I want to see what he does with a comic book. I've seen comic books based on George R.R. Martin's work in Game of Thrones, and that type of stuff is really cool, what they're able to do in a comic book setting for the Game of Thrones universe. It really is able to transfer the grittiness in a whole different way than the novels did, than the show does. So that's real exciting that we're going to get a look at that person's brain through those windows. We're approaching up on 55 minutes now, guys, so I think it's going to be time to say goodbye again for this week. I know Matt and myself have sat down and been talking a little bit, so you're going to be able to expect new episodes right around Tuesday or Wednesday. So if you're a night owl and you want to stay up all night, you might be able to catch the upload of the episode on Tuesday night, but we will always have new episodes up for you all on Wednesdays. So keep coming back. Like we always ask you, leave us comments if you have anything that you want addressed, and we would love to talk more about specific things that you guys want. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and until next time, this is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this has been the Call to the Brewman's Bottle.